Hello, everyone. This is Peter from Franke de la Fuente, and today I'm with lawyer and senior associate Gemma Fuentes. And what we will do today is that we will do a recap on regarding the short-term rental license. We know that there were changes made now actually a year ago, so that's a good reason to do an update on it. But it's also a new horizontal property law that will enter into force in April, so that's quite soon. And we believe it could be quite useful if our audience would learn a little bit more about that law and the implications it can have for their ambitions to rent out their properties. So we'll do a recap of the new regulations that came into force a year ago, changes after that throughout the year, and now where do we stand in April? All right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the new regulations that came into force from the Junta de Andalucia February last year. Which were the main points?
Okay, first of all, the new decree published last year says that the owners of the property have to communicate to Junta de Andalucia the rental company or the management company doing the rentals. So if they are doing the rentals themselves, they have to communicate this to the Junta, and if it's a company, the Junta de Andalucia has to be aware of that.
Mm.
Also, now is no longer required the LPO in order to rent out the properties, but in the other hand, you need to say to the Junta de Andalucía in the declaración responsable that you present that your property complies with all the urban law requirements. Mm. So LPO is no longer required because there are some properties that were built before the LPOs started to be granted, but you need to confirm to Junta de Andalucía that your property is all right in urban terms in order to be rented.
Correct. So we have, first of all, there's the new requirements on property owners and management companies that they need to declare which periods throughout the year the property will be rented.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, there's no actual requirement to have an LPO to rent the property, but the Junta de Andalucía, they included this in the regulations because there are many properties out there that were built before 1986, right? When the LPO as a legal body was introduced in Spain. So I think this can be a misunderstanding. It's good that you pointed it out that, yes, there's no actual requirement to keep an LPO to rent it out, but at the same time, you need to be aware as a homeowner of the urbanistic situation of that property.
Mm-hmm, correct.
And that I think is a misunderstanding sometimes, that the urbanistic situation is irrelevant, which it isn't really, right?
Yeah, it's very important. And the Junta de Andalucía now put the pressure and the obligations on the owner in order for them to be aware of the situation of their properties before renting them out.
Yeah. And another thing, so we have, I think one of the other main points is also that the powers were given, so to speak, to the municipalities to introduce certain limitations, right? Am I right?
Yeah. From now on, the municipalities can limit these rentals depending on the zone or area of the city in order to try to limit this activity. So that's why Junta de Andalucía wants to know now the exact periods and the exact properties that are going to be rented in order to be able to limit this activity when they see or in the zones they see that is carried out massively.
And that's why we know that, for example, in Málaga, there's a limitation by zones. In Fuentes, they have another interpretation, meaning that you actually need to have a private entrance to your property to rent it out short term.
Correct.
Which isn't aligned with other municipalities. I think it's important to point out that to navigate in this as a property owner, you need to be aware that it might differ from one municipality to another. So if you hear from a friend that they have certain regulations in Fuentes, they're probably not the same in Estepona or in another town.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on then to talk about other kinds of factors that need to weigh in as a property owner if you want to rent it out, and that is the power, so to speak, of the community of owners. So previously, we know that the community of owners, they could limit the short-term rentals within their community. Am I right?
Yeah. The horizontal property law said that communities of owners could limit or condition this activity, but it was not clear if this limitation included the prohibition of the touristic rentals. And this has been clarified by a sentence of the Spanish Supreme Court that this limitation includes the prohibition, and that's why we are having a new regulation entering into force on the 3rd April this year, stating that from now on, from that date onwards, the communities can prohibit the touristic rentals with a majority of 3/5 of the communities.
Yeah. So before, the community of owners, they could limit it. They could limit in what way? In what ways could they limit?
Yeah, they could limit it, for example, the maximum days that the tenant could be rented the property, for example, 15 days for each tenant or something like that. Or, for example, increase the community fee for those owners carrying out those rentals at their properties.
Right. But property owners or communities or even us weren't really sure if the limitations the express limitations in the regulations, if they also included prohibitions. But now we know that with a majority vote, with 3/5 of the votes, a community owner can prohibit short-term rentals in the community. How about those property owners that already have the rental license?
Okay, this new regulation does not have retroactive effects, which means that the owners who already had their licenses and the licenses complied with the regulations dictated by the Junta de Andalucía, they can continue doing the activity. But this will imply that these new owners that wants to carry out this activity from 3rd April onwards, they cannot do it if there is a prohibition by the community of owners.
And we will probably learn a little bit more the practical, so to speak, steps to show to the Junta de Andalucía that it's prohibited or not. If that is a one case-by-case decision, we believe not, because that's going to be a massive burden for the communities. Or if it's a general vote at the annual meeting, either yes or no.
Yeah, because now the new regulation will say that each owner needs the express approval from the community of owners in order to carry out the activity with a majority of 3/5 of the owners.
Yeah.
So we will need to see how this will be implemented.
Yeah, correct. All right. So bottom line is, now in April and going forward, be aware that the community of owners can prohibit short-term rentals in the community. If you have a property right now already, you have your rental license, even though they vote to prohibit it, you are protected.
Yeah, you can continue carrying out the activity.
Right. And I know, as a matter of fact, that I have a lot of questions, maybe you have as well, from brokers out there or clients asking us. So the regulations will come into force in April. Should I get the rental license just to be safe? I have no plans to actually rent it out, but I think it could be good for the value of the property. Maybe I want to rent it out in a couple of years' time. What can we say about that right now?
Well, the thing is that you need to communicate to Junta Andalucía, following the new decree, that the periods in which you are planning to rent out the property. So if you get the license and then you don't rent out the property, you can get a fine from the Junta Andalucía, because what they are trying now to do is to go against these clandestine licenses or preventive licenses. So this is not that clear.
Yeah, clandestine preventive licenses. So let's explain that. It means, with simple words, that the Junta de Andalucía, their attitude is that they want to be able to control the numbers of licenses out there. The municipalities as well can limit it, That's the whole idea of the new regulation. And if you're not actually renting it out, you're just keeping your rental license because you'd like to have one. That's not really what the licenses are for. Correct. They are for the ones that are actually actively renting them out. So be a little bit aware of that, and potentially that you could be fined if you're not, if their regulations are interpreted in that way, that you need to actually actively rent them out. All right?
Correct. That's true.
Finally, then, another thing that we as lawyers, we it's things are very rarely very clear, in our work. So another question that will appear probably is that, in May, let's say, or in June, one of a property homeowner, they have a rental license for their property, and there's a buyer, and he wants to buy the property, and he wants to continue to rent out the property. And of course, he might be informed that there is already a rental license in place. Then you should probably be able to continue to do rentals with that same license. Is that so sure?
The thing is that in order for the new owner to continue doing the activity, you need a confirmation from the Junta de Andalucía that you can take over that license. So we will need to wait for the confirmation from the Junta de Andalucía. And for example, in these cases, when, for example, I'm the owner, and then there is a prohibition from the 3rd April onwards in the community to do this activity, and then I sell the property to you, and you want to start using my license, this is subject to the previous approval from the Junta de Andalucía. So we will need to see how the Junta authorize or denegate this fact.
Yeah. Either they will see it as a new application or an updated, so to speak, that you need to fulfill the requirements at that point. And that point is after the new decree has come into force, and they can interpret that then that there's a prohibition in the community, hence you're not granted the license.
Yeah.
But it's important to point out that we have to wait and see.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. I think that's the update. Thanks, Gemma.
You're welcome.